Welcome to the AI Unveiled podcast. Today I'm speaking with Jean-Louis Quéguiner, founder and CEO of Gladia, a company that offers audio infrastructure for voice-first platforms, starting with best-in-class transcription. Welcome, Jean-Louis.
Thank you so much for having me, Gaurav.
To kick things off, tell us a little bit about your background before starting Gladia.
Before starting Gladia, I was working at a big European cloud provider called OVHcloud. And I was there the director, then VP of everything that was related to AI, data, and big data infrastructures.
Wow, okay. So seems like really good background to start an infra tech company, especially on for voice-first platforms. Can you share a bit about the moment you realized that there was a need that compelled you to leave an awesome company in OVHcloud and start a company like Gladia?
I've been in entrepreneur mindset for quite some time. I built another company when I was back in Canada, which I failed miserably. So that's something you learn from. But yeah, for the few years when I was working in OVHcloud, I was working very closely to the founder, Octave, and it gave me back the trust I needed to start a company first. And second thing is that I was seeing that AI was a bit different from every other SaaS I was seeing on the market. One of the reasons being like the infrastructure part is extremely hard. It's relying on GPUs that are, I would say, an healthy component in general. When a CPU dies, you see it. When a disk crashes, you see it. When the GPU dies, that's not the case. Maybe it's going to say it's up and it's not running. Maybe it says it's running, but it's giving bad results. It's very hard infrastructure. It's very costly. In the end, I saw that it was a job per se. And I was seeing that most of the customers we were having were struggling. Even if you have open source models, open source software out there, it was extremely hard for them just to maintain. So I saw that there was a market need not only for building a model and a software, but also maintaining it and offering it as a I would say managed infrastructure per se, because AI is extremely hard because the hardware takes a big part of the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awesome. And that's a good segue into, for those who aren't familiar, can you tell us a bit more about Gladia?
So Gladia is, as you said, audio infrastructure company. We focus a lot on transcription, both asynchronous and real time. And we started 2.5 years ago. At the beginning, we were not focusing on audio. We were doing a bit of everything. We were having 500 APIs. And one of the thesis I had from the beginning was that it was hard to just put in production AI. So I put like 500 API into one single container. And you just did Docker run, and you had all these API like image recognition, OCR, translation, speech recognition, speech synthesis, etc., into the same container, which was at the time I thought was a good idea. The thing is, like when you're a tech founder, you think that the more features you have, the better it is. It's not the case. You need to be extremely focused, and by doing everything, I realized we were doing nothing. So we refocused. We did what I call a spider web of all the capabilities that our software was able to do in the use case in the market. We talked to as many people as possible. And we ended up seeing that the most important topic for the companies that was the least addressed was voice. And it was prior to ChatGPT, actually. So it was before the boom of conversational AI. And when we did that, we saw that none of the big provider out there was able to handle multilingual, was able to having an appropriate pricing, was able to perform the transcription in appropriate timing, and multilingual was absolutely catastrophic. So we decided to focus on this particular use case, which was the voice, and we doubled down on what our customer were doing, which was like they liked existing provider, but they liked even more having Whisper internally. And they were facing exactly the problem I mentioned. They were not able to scale. Scaling in terms of HR, recruiting the right people. Scaling in terms of AI issues like hallucinations is a good example of kind of problem we are not able to scale internally. And the third one was infrastructure, cost, and maintenance. So we decided to focus on Whisper and build the best Whisper implementation out there. And we released the first Whisper API in the world. It was back in February 2022. If I'm correct, or 2023, sorry. And it boomed overnight because this is what the market wanted.
Nice.
So we just talked to people and did what they want and saved the company basically from building something that nobody wants.
So Whisper is, of course, OpenAI's speech-to-text model that you provide a managed service on top of. So you built a 500 APIs. Docker containerizer, built a lot of technology, and then maybe afterwards spent a lot of time doing customer development, right? Like, would you flip the script, and how much time do you think that would have kind of saved, or maybe it was a rite of passage, right? Like, how do you see that?
I think it's a rite of passage. I needed that to be better in business. I needed to be kicked in the butt, sorry to say that, to understand what marketing, you need to feel the pain to understand that. Okay? If you never fail, then you don't understand the pain, and then you're not actually grateful for going through this passage. And now you're extremely sharp, or trying to be extremely sharp on this topic and reading a lot and trying to understand why it's not working. So I would call it a bit like if you're a tech founder, it's like if you never broke the production, you need to break the production to understand how important it is to have unit tests.
Yeah.
Writing unit tests is writing unit tests. Like, yeah, okay, cool. Once you broke the production and understand how unit tests are important, then you start to do it for the right reasons. So I think I needed that for the right reason. Now, if I start another company after Gladia, I would definitely won't write any single line of code. Definitely, I won't do that. And I think that's something that you see with second-time founders a lot. I'm meeting a lot of them because I'm having problems that they used to have. And it's funny to see how they are not running heads down into an idea. And I think that's something that is beautiful when you're an investor, in my opinion. It's like when you have first-time founders, you have people that are completely crazy, burning crazy amount of energy to build something because they are just crazy. They love their idea and they want to go through it. When you see second-time founders, they are more like calm people. From what I've seen, they study the market better. They don't write any single line of code. They talk to as many people as possible. They don't write any product. They don't write anything until they find a market. So you don't have this same energy, but you have more efficiency. So I guess it was the right balance to find. I couldn't expect to be efficient.
Yeah.
Because it was kind of a first-time real company I was building.
Yeah. So, I mean, for you, obviously, learning from your own mistakes was important. Maybe for some
It's the
others,
most
they either
important
have
thing.
to learn from their own mistakes, or maybe they can learn from others' mistakes. And you're absolutely right, right? Like, there's a saying that first-time founders over-focus on product and tech, and second-time founders focus a little bit more on the distribution. Despite the mistakes, as you claim, your company is obviously on the right trajectory now. Can you just talk a little bit about how many customers you have? You just raised a recent round of funding. Maybe elaborate on that as well.
Yeah, we have around 600 customers, paying customers. 60 plus of them are enterprise, and overall we have more than 95,000 users on the platform. And yeah, it's a good funding round that we did. It was 16 million, and we are happy because it was like mainly focusing on the what we think is the market of the future, which is the call centers that will be completely reinvented with the voice. And I think customer interaction or user interaction will work better with the voice. I'm actually coding using Cursor. Okay, you know Cursor, like
Yeah.
the code AI code environment. But I'm using like a tiny tool I've done, which is I'm replacing the Mac speech recognition by Gladia real-time API that we released lately, and I'm interacting with Cursor only with voice. I say, hey, can you try to do this code this way, this way, this way? And it's no building the code, and I just click apply and iterating through this. So I'm mostly writing my email using Shortwave, which is a kind of ChatGPT for mail. And I'm writing my email with my command option shortcut, and I'm speaking, and then I say, okay, rephrase, and then sending my emails. So I think voice is the natural way of conversing with between humans and machines. And due to the quality, it's going to get better over time, and the interaction of human will be more and more natural with machines with voice. So we raise the money to focus a lot on this market of call centers and customer interactions, because we think it's the future, and it's a huge market.
Yeah. So you can be writing code into production while driving your car, or maybe taking the subway in Paris, just by talking to your phone.
People will think you're crazy, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. What use cases, if you look, next few years, what use cases or industries do you think will be most impacted by voice AI assistants?
To me, of course, customer relationship is one of them, but I think there are two of them that are two other AI general, I would say, verticals that will be extremely impacted, and some of them will be a bit less, but still very important. I think the biggest one will be medical care. We are discovering new diseases every day. People are getting older and older, so we discover even new disease when people are getting older because before they were dying. So we don't discover those diseases. But the more we go, more disease, more people being, I would say, needed to be having a treatment. We have less and less time to work. If you look at the doctors 30 years ago, 40 years ago, they were working more than what people actually work now. We have more and more female in the industry, which is absolutely great. But female tends to have kids and take, I would say, sabbaticals sometimes. So we have less workload for the same number of people. And people wants to have a better quality of life. So in general, they are asking for more from the healthcare industry. So what I'm seeing is like they use a huge surge for the healthcare, and it takes 15 years to get a good doctor. So we have a big problem for the next 15, 20 years when there will be a gap between the demand and the proposed offer, I would say, in the medical space. And I think the only way you can treat that is with AI gaining 50% of productivity. And voice is one of the big vector because you just speak your report and then you get your system being aligned. You think about people like Tortoise, for instance, doing something amazing. You just talk to the machine, it's going to click everywhere to create the prescriptions and create the report, etc. So I think there's going to be more and more automation thanks to the voice. Again, I'm talking a lot, but that's going to give you an example. You can write a book in 5 hours. You're going to write a Tolkien book in 5 hours. So this is how much the voice is compacted, is giving a compacted knowledge. So that's the first use case. And the second use case, in my opinion, that's going to be impacted with AI is education. Most of the transmission we have in education is oral. You spend a lot of time in the school. Yes, you have the PDF or you have the PowerPoint, but the real transmission of information is going through the interaction between the professor and the student. And this is pure knowledge that's getting out of the window, right? It's gone forever. So I think education is going to have a huge, I would say, help thanks to AI and especially speech, and also disabilities will be highly impacted thanks to AI and speech recognition, real-time speech recognition. So more accessibility. And finally, the last use case that I see that is a bit less than the two ones that I've seen before is, I think, laws. Law in general, the law industry will be highly impacted, like lawyers and things like that. Is a very oral culture and oral interactions and all these things, plus the amount of data that is being compacted into all these voice interactions needs to be searched in a smart way. And so far, we didn't have smart search. We just had it words. So if you say the word during the auditions, then maybe it's going to pop up, but you didn't say the word, but you had the concept, then it was not catched up by the search engine. Now with vector search, you're able to find similar cases, similar interactions, even if the keywords hasn't been stated. And I think the law industry will be highly impacted in the future, a bit less than what I think in terms of education and science and I would say in general healthcare. But I think law in general will be impacted also. That's to me the three key pillars.
Yeah, and I think you started with CRM or support as the first one as well. And I think it's interesting. It's already, take for example healthcare. It's already transcribing to just take notes that in most cases so far has been just lying somewhere for compliance, is already part of the culture. So now you're building upon that, which and then of course as Gladia, what you're doing is building the underlying infra layer. Now I get the voice to text entirely. Maybe can you elaborate a little bit more on what is the infrastructure that you provide on top of the speech to text recognition?
Speech to text recognition is something that is kind of a raw material, a raw diamond. Okay, it's not perfect. It's a good basis to start with. Like OpenAI Whisper is definitely a extremely good architecture per se. Maybe we can change the decoder. The encoder remains what is the standard industry right now. Like a lot of people are building on top of it, but the decoder can be changed. The decoder is, think about LLMs and Whisper is the same architecture. Both are the same. Think about a mountain. You climb the mountain with what is called an encoder, then you go into what is called the latent space. Maybe you've heard those buzzwords, and then you go down, and it's called the decoder. The decoder of OpenAI Whisper was GPT-2, so like kind of the ancestor of the current systems that we see. So it was like prior to GPT-4 and prior to GPT-3. So the amount of knowledge, it was the first GPT model, or one of the first GPT model. So the amount of knowledge and the way the knowledge was compacted into the system was not as good as what you see now. Like you take a 3 billion model from Phi, Microsoft Phi, it's like better than GPT-2. That was 1.5 billion, but like it's crazier better. So maybe changing the decoder can help, etc. But in general, think about you have an encoder and a decoder. And this architecture is like a diamond. It's a raw diamond. It's perfect in many ways because it has knowledge, but it has some drawbacks. And among the drawbacks is the creativity. So it's like in your brain. If I speak to you and I'm missing a word, shall I just say word, by the way? I didn't say word. That's a good example. A traditional systems, traditional ASR system, speech recognition system, will transcribe word into word, right? It's the word I said, WORLD, because I mispronounced it. A GPT decoder, like think about Whisper, it's going to say word, WORD. Why? Because word doesn't make any sense in this sentence. But the closest match in terms of vectorial representation or sound representation will be WORD, word, right? So it won't say do a direct match in the phonetic, but it's going to take the context and will be able to replace it. So I just gave you an example why it's the creativity of Gen AI in ASR is making a huge difference. In speech to text is making a huge difference. Okay? That's what you do in your brain. If I mispronounce, you switch it. If you're missing a word, you switch it. Okay. Amazing. The problem you have with this creativity is going to start to add some hallucinations. Because at the end of the podcast, I'm going to say thank you. And what you're going to reply will be thank you. And if you look at those systems that are called autoregressive model, they look at what happened before and they will imagine what's going to happen after. So if I say thank you, you say thank you. If I look and I say what's happening after thank you, because people usually reply thank you. So after a second thank you, you're going to have a third thank you. And then you see the third three thank you. What's going to happen after thank you? Another thank you. And then you end up with thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm going to give you another one. If you say the reliability is 99.99999, the system will say what's happened after a 9. I've seen 5 nines before. That must be another 9. And what happened after 6 9? There might be another 9. So you have many problems that comes with autoregressive models, which are kind of a loop, a system looping on itself, looking at what happened in the past and predicting what's happening in the future, is that when it starts to see repeating pattern, it's going to start to hallucinate. And I'm saying hallucinate, it's like hallucinate a lot. So one of the drawbacks of Whisper and in ASR in general is that they were trained on data. And data are not free. It's like very hard to find them. You can find them on YouTube, podcast, or subtitles, movie subtitles. And what happens in the movie subtitles is that maybe you've never done it, but imagine you download the movie and then you download the subtitles that goes with the movie because you want to watch it in whatever language, okay? At the end of the movie, let's think about Star Wars because I'm a huge Star Wars fan. You're going to have the music of Star Wars, and then at the end, you're going to have subtitle made by Amaro.org, for instance. What the system is going to learn is that this music, the subtitle for this music, so the speech that goes with this music is subtitle made by. And if you repeat that on over multiple movies, it's going to start to think that music is actually the transcription is subtitle made by. So it's going to start to hallucinate also. So what we provide on our hand, we made sure that the fine-tuned model that we had and all the upper layer on the infrastructure and also within the latent space, we don't have those hallucinations. We have ways to remove these hallucinations, to find them and to remove them if we have them, or to cut them at the first place. So you need to combine multiple techniques to do that. So then you start to have a good diamond. So now the question is like, I have a good diamond, how do I make jewelry out of it? Okay, so you have a raw diamond, now you have a sharp diamond, now you need to make jewelry. And jewelry comes with LLMs, and that's why ASR is booming right now. Before we had just raw materials from the voice, we didn't have any ways to leverage it. Now you can ask summaries, chapterization, you can ask extract the structured data from out of it. So let's say from a conversation, you can extract first name, last name, phone numbers, emails, addresses, etc., etc. And you have ways to do it in a way that you couldn't have it before. So I'm going to give you an example. My email or whatever email is going to be gohavkotak at next47.com. Let's say that. Okay. I don't know if it's your real email, by the way. I hope I didn't leak anything.
Yeah,
But
now
I
everyone
assume.
knows my email.
So that's okay. Okay. If you look at the ASR, I'm just going to say go have. Then you're going to have written something dot, then your last name. And instead of the at from Gmail, the arrobas, you're going to have at and gmail.com. What an LLM will be able to do is like to understand that this sentence was in fact an email and give you a fully crafted and formatted email, right? You never had that before. Not even name entity recognition or whatever NLP technique was not able to do this. So now from a diamond that is sharp, you are able to have like extremely structured data that you can leverage into CRM, you can leverage into automated processes. Think about syncing your email with UPS, at the same time with other postal services or whatever, when you're calling a contact center. So you have so many use cases now that are able to be leveraged thanks to voice plus LLM. So what we do is like we make sure that all the chain of events and all this chain of API is handled correctly in an appropriate amount of time, in a very fast way, so that you can sync your CRM or any other system that you have with medical records, and you need to have blood types. Another example, blood types is A+. And I'm going to say, what is your blood type? You're going to say A+, or you say A positive, or you're going to say A in lowercase, positive. Or you're going to hesitate, oh, maybe it's B, no, it's A positive. There is no NLP system out there that was able to do that, except from LLM. And now you can normalize it with A uppercase underscore positive, and that can sync into your medical system. So what happened with LLMs is like the voice was kind of the raw diamond, you'd say, to become Jerry. And now we're able to do that. So that's the mission of Gladia, is just to make sure that this whole chain of event comes from unsharp diamond that you have in your company to a full Jerry that you can leverage into your CRM.
So it's clear that LLMs have brought a step function improvement in speech to text, right? And I think that's the gist, right? And of course, they hallucinate, and companies like yours are spending a lot of effort and energy in fixing that. So my question to you is, now that LLMs are here and companies like Gladia are here, are we there yet when it comes to speech to text, at least for English? Or, is it such a long tail that you could spend the next decades of your life and Gladia working on that?
You can spend the next decades. We can always spend the next decades. So there's something different between LLMs and ASR. Is that there is nothing that looks more like a summary than another summary. If I give a long text to you, Claude, from Anthropic, I'm going to have a good summary. If I give it to GPT-4, I'm going to have another summary. GPT-3.5, I'm going to have another summary. I'm going to give it to Mistral, I'm going to have another summary. Which one is the good one? It's hard to say, to be honest. Like, they all look the same. When it comes to ASR, you miss the uppercase, you're going to be blamed. You miss a dot, you're going to be blamed. You miss a period, you're going to be blamed. I say Kotak, if I say K-O-T-A-Q, I'm going to be blamed, even if I've never seen your name before. So even the thing that you as a human would have done as a mistake, people will blame you for that. So you have a ground truth that is direct, which is the voice that you've heard and the things that you know as a human, and you will be blaming the AI for not being perfect. Okay? So it's very, very, very hard. So there's always room for improvement. That being said, English is an extremely well-defined problem with a lot of data that is now relatively precise. There are things that you won't be able to, that are not addressed yet, because that's not something that are part of the ASR. And then not even talking about all the other languages. Within English, you have another problem, which is the accents. My accent is pretty heavy. So that's one of the reasons I worked a lot on Gladia at the beginning around the accents and the code switching. Accents are very hard. If I take my accent, it looks like a French person. So in terms of, I would say, audio features, it looks like a French person, but I'm speaking English. Just this problem is very complex, and there are crazy company working in accents removal, and they're making huge money. And we found that people are more happy when you have accent reduction in call centers versus offshore. Just like the same service, the net promoter score will be better if you remove accents, because people have bias towards some uh, region of the world, some accents. So it's like crazy, but that's how human works. So, man, there is work for the next 10 years at least.
Yeah. And then one thing I've heard about in the voice AI domain that, obviously as close to real time as possible matters quite a bit. And it's also quite hard. What's the state of that today in terms of latency and, things you can do to improve that?
That's an extremely good question, because now it goes back to infrastructure. Why is it an infrastructure play? People in their brain, they don't see any difference between what is being instantaneous and what is like slightly delay when it's less than 500 milliseconds. Anything below okay, exception from F1 driver and whatever sports like people, but in general, with everything that is less than 500 milliseconds, you won't notice. Okay, you will notice when it's slightly over. So maybe you experience that in Google Meet meetings or Zoom or whatever. The difference when you see like people are like, cutting each other when they speak, this is because you move from 500 to 800 milliseconds. This tiny 300 is the reason why your meeting, you keep cutting each other. And this is coming from many parts of the infrastructure. Maybe it's coming from the transatlantic network that you're having, which is going to cost you 150 milliseconds. Maybe it's coming from a failover on a telephony network and you're pinging through another point of presence, etc. And you're going to have another 100 milliseconds. So there are many infrastructure things that can go wrong. But what I mean is like you make the difference between 500 and 800 milliseconds. You don't make any difference between 0 and 500. So all the play of speech to text right now is to make sure that we go as low as possible and as precise as possible, so that your full chain of event, speech to text, LLM and lookup into your internal CRM, internal database, UPS API, or whatever, plus text to speech, go below 500, 800 milliseconds. Otherwise, you're not going to keep interrupting the bot, and the bot going to keep interrupting you, and it's going to be a crazy bad experience. So right now, the state of the art is between 100 and 300 milliseconds. 100 milliseconds is like usually relatively bad quality, because fairly bad quality as of now. Maybe in 2 months, 3 months, it's going to be different, because you're relying on models that are lighter and are faster. And 300 milliseconds, like we are able to do it in 200, 300 milliseconds by running a whisper model. Okay, maybe it's going to change in the next few months, but that's how it is now. So it gives you another 200 milliseconds for the LLM. LLM are extremely slow. Usually they take between 500 to 4 seconds for ChatGPT, depending on the language. If I take Hindi, it's going to cost you 4 more times, because you have 4 more tokens for the language than for English. Depending on the geography, transatlantic, depending on the day, Monday versus Sunday, and depending on the time of the day. Between 8 and 12, it's going to be like busy period. It's going to be super slow. If you go at night or between like noon and 2 p.m., it will be like super fast. So it's like very hard. You have this like slightly uncertain time for LLMs. And text to speech, usually you can have at first time to first byte that is going to be around 100, 150 milliseconds. So overall, you see that we are not even in the 500 milliseconds. And we need to get there. So there are many things that we can compact, but ASR is not the one that needs to be compacted. It's definitely LLMs that needs to be predictable and fast. And it's very hard because there are a lot of parameters in there.
Yeah. And that's why the infra play is important, as you mentioned. You mentioned Whisper a few times. I believe you're building on top of Whisper. Can you maybe just elaborate on, in terms of a company, for models, how much are you doing your own? Are you doing any pre-training versus just relying on Whisper and tuning? And also on the infra layer, are you lining up to buy NVIDIA chips, or are you sitting on top of the hyperscalers? Just a little bit of kind of where you fit in the value chain to provide this awesome service.
That's a good question. First, we don't do pre-training. We do fine-tuning. As of now, it's very uncertain how the data will be. It was uncertain until a week ago when there was a DMCA. I don't know if you see the judgment against OpenAI regarding DMCA breach, where it was stated that OpenAI can basically use whatever data they want. in training. It was like stated 2 weeks ago, I guess, in the beginning of November. I'm sure there is still plenty of Vivendi, Universal, and other music provider that's going to go after them. So it's very uncertain which data you can use. So that's the first thing. The second thing, when you do fine tuning, you're relying on an extremely strong model at first, and fine tuning is going to help you to address the problems that Whisper has without having a huge cost. Training is like pretty expensive, so you need to be. And there are a lot of problems that you can fix from Whisper that are done with machine learnings and other algorithm, and you're gonna get better results than just training the model again. As I explained, it's a LLM type of architecture. You have the mountain, you need to climb it and descend the mountain, right? It's gonna still have these hallucinations. It's hallucinations. It's not with fine tuning that's gonna that you're gonna remove the hallucinations. You can improve it. You can remove some of them. You can make things better, but there are facts that you can't get rid of. And so the only way is like to combine this ensemble approach. So that's what we do. Like we do have the vanilla Whisper, plus we fine tune, plus we do plenty of other models on top of it to make it like balance. That's the first thing. Second thing, in terms, we don't buy NVIDIA chips for now. We raised 16 million. Then it goes to infrastructure play. How much capex, capital expenditure, you are able to leverage versus the time for your financing. So if we refinance the company, so you're in the VC business, so you know what I mean. If you finance the company, you usually finance the company for 2 years. With your revenue and the amount of money you need to have, are you going to use this money to make an investment that's going to have a return on investment in 2 years? And you can't use this money for research and development and product development, or you're going to use a pay-as-you-go, which is going to be roughly the same after 2 years, but between the 2 years, you're going to have this money to make more engineering and make your product better. So it's more a question of profitability. Do you want to go with profitability in 2 years, or you want to go with like the best product on the other end? So it's not the right place and the right moment for us to buy infrastructure and to put them into data centers. So that's one thing. Second thing, we didn't fully optimize all the algorithm. We know how to get better, like in X, probably 5 or 6. And we need engineering for that. We know how to reduce the footprint by 5 or 6. So it's not the right moment to bet on a certain type of architecture, certain type of infrastructure, when we know like regularly every 3 months, we saturate the GPUs in memory. Then we reward the memory, we saturate the cores, what is called CUDA cores. And then after 3 months, we saturate the memory again. After 3 months, we saturate the cores, and we keep bumping between cores and memory. So we don't know which infrastructure is going to be the optimal, but we know we can gain a 5 or 6. When we're going to gain a 5 or 6, then we're going to probably start investing in probably 2 years, having our own infrastructure. Also, when you want excellence of operations, usually hyperscalers know what they do.
Yeah.
So the AWS of this world, GCP, OVHcloud, Azure, etc., they know their job better than us. And this infrastructure is like extremely non-reliable. I used to work in big data, which is completely the opposite. You can put whatever CPU you want, whatever hard drive, it's made for fail. It was designed to fail. This is not designed to fail in AI. You need to have 300 milliseconds latency. You don't have retries. You can't rely on very cheap and old GPUs because it won't be as fast. You need state of the art, and you need to have an appropriate cooling. I did experiments when I was in the past at OVHcloud, as I mentioned. When you're operating a GPU that is above 40 degrees, if you take 10 degrees more, so we move from Celsius, talking about science, not Fahrenheit, okay? But Celsius, if you go between 40 and 50 degrees Celsius, you're going to have 20% loss in speed, just for 10 degrees. And these machines are consuming 300 watts. So 300 watts, you need to have a good AC. You need to be placed at the right place versus the AC. 10 degrees is going to cost you 20% in latency. Another 10 degrees is going to give you another 20%. And the reason is because it's eating so much that the surge goes on and it goes in security and stop working. And then when it's below the 40 degrees, it's going to start work again. It's going to hit the surge and stop. So it's kind of off, on. So you're breaking the machine also.
Yeah.
So what I mean is like operations of the things are extremely hard. So you better let the people do it.
And I think what you said before is very relevant, where you have enough optimizations you can do today for the next few years that you don't need to go lower down the stack and take all the headache of what comes with going lower down the stack for mission critical apps, right? And you're not necessarily looking to optimize your gross margin profile today. You're optimizing the best value for the customers. So I think that answer, and it's all about focus, as we kind of started this conversation with, and that matters. So you use some of the hyperscalers or other cloud providers for some of your infrastructure. You also compete, at least with Google and some of the others, right? And it's not uncommon for infra, especially infra AI startups, to compete with the cloud hyperscalers. How do you kind of differentiate yourself from the competition? Whether, I mean, we talked a little bit about a product, but also from a go-to-market and anything else.
It's very hard to be honest with you, because if you think about GCP, Azure, AWS, they have like plenty of free stuff for the startups and the
right.
companies. They have multi-year commitments that they can leverage from their customers. They can bundle that into other offers to make sure the balance fits. So they can like give a small price on, I don't know, EC2 and have a higher price on the ASR. So overall, it combines. So they give you a good discount on other product that have more profitability to make sure that the overall balance is better and they have better leverage on you. So it's always very hard. So you need to be smart in the way you can compete with them. Messaging and focus is always one thing. Proximity with your customers, being extremely close to them, being extremely close to their roadmap, helping them accelerate their go-to-market. So if you think about the call centers, in general, this is an industry where people are extremely sharp in network. Everything that I mentioned, like the 100 milliseconds, etc., they know everything. They go through cold network, etc. They know if the call is coming from this region, which provider I'm going to use in terms of networks, etc. They're extremely sharp. But usually those people have been designed in their brain, and the way you hire the engineering on their side was designed to be 99.99999. Those are people that don't like entropy. They don't like new things. They like new things, but they like things that are reliable. AI is totally the opposite. It's completely crazy. It can give you a 200 code when you call an API saying, hey, everything went okay. And in the response, going to say, hey, I cannot fulfill your request. Have you seen that? Remember ChatGPT? You say, hey, can you do that? It's going to say, yes, I can, but I won't. So this is absolutely the opposite of the mindset. This is completely creative, completely plenty of entropy, plenty of rules that you don't master. So the mindset that you have when you're building AI, and especially Gen AI, is the opposite of network people that wants to have 100% reliability and repeatability. So usually the problem that those call centers have is that their roadmap is extremely hard to address in AI because it's not the appropriate mindset, and you didn't hire your engineering and scale your engineering according to that. Because you don't want creative people. You want people that deliver 99.9999. And I had the same problem when I was working with an hyperscaler. I had all the past people building the products, etc. And at some point, I got part of the network teams, and I was like, "What the hell?" It's just people are not shaped the same way, and it's the same in call centers. So the way you can better leverage your proximity with the customer is like having your roadmap very close to them, addressing their GTM because their board are asking for AI, their customer are asking for AI, and they have not built their company to be creative and to be, sorry to say that, having entropy in the company. So you are there to help them address this thing that their customer wants. And AWS won't do it, GCP won't do it. Or you will have to combine all this thing internally, which is going to cost you in a roadmap, in hiring new people, in GTM, basically.
Yeah.
So the pressure of the market, you are probably one of the few actors that are able to address that because you're small enough to be flexible. You're fast enough to be addressing their GTM, while the others is going to take times and years maybe to address this.
Yeah. And I think when we were talking about kind of where we are in terms of accuracy of speech to text or ASR, one of the things you said, it's not just about ASR, it's about the kind of company specific context that goes after, whether it's the pharma company or the accuracy need to take notes. And maybe that's where the intimacy to customer can really shine, right? Because you can really customize for that models. So Jean-Louis, I hear a lot about multimodal AI models, whether it's from Gemini or OpenAI. And historically, again, you correct me if I'm wrong, you go from speech, then to text, then make sense right? Where a lot of the multimodal, the intelligence is built into the audio footprint itself, right? So maybe you can provide some perspectives on those developments and how that impacts Gladia one way or the other.
Excellent questions. One of my favorite one, actually. So the thing is, like, it's really impressive. When you see it at first, it looks like like the movie. When you're gonna have extremely low latency, that's beautiful. When I say, we climb the mountain and we descend the mountain, you don't have you climb the mountain in audio, you descend the mountain in text. Then you have to do some processing, maybe LLM. So climb the mountain in text, go down in the mountain with text, and then you need to do text to speech. So you climb in text and you descend in voice. It's like 3 mountains to climb. Um, and and when you do multimodal, you climb a mountain and you descend the mountain in absolutely the appropriate medium that you want to see.
Yeah.
So you save like 3 times the energy, 3 times the resources, 3 times the time. It's like, seems to be the perfect thing. It looks perfect, but there are some drawbacks. The first one is like, how do I input my business data? And how do I interact with my business data? And all my subject as a company is not to do hype, is to do like business-oriented solutions. Where do I put my CRM when I climb a mountain with voice and I descend the mountain with voice? Where does my CRM plugs in? It's supposed to be at the top of the mountain, but you can't interact with the top of the mountain. It's vectors, right? So how do I look up in the CRM? How do I look up the last address? How do I confirm the date? How do I confirm that the security questions? I can't. I need to descend the mountains, goes into text, interact with APIs with my CRM or whatever systems, and then I need to go up and down again with the text and voice. So it seems to be like an amazing idea at first, but on a business standpoint, it's very hard. Second thing that you mentioned before, or we mentioned overall in the podcast, or we'll mention in the podcast, is that you need to be appropriately fitting your AI with the business context, right? So let's think about multimodal. Let's think about image and text. That means OCR. Will the multimodal OCR will be perfect for handwriting on checks? Will be perfect for imagery of medical imagery? Will be perfect for other use cases such as cinema or whatever? The thing is, like, when you do multimodal, you're spending a lot of energy and time by building a huge model, like a huge brain that's going to be fairly generalist, that won't fit exactly the use case you're and fine-tuning the use case you're trying to address or the industry you're trying to address. So I have a pros and cons. The technology is amazing. The latencies are amazing. Like, honestly, the experience is crazy. Does it fit businesses? I'm not quite sure yet. Until we find a way to interact with this latent space, this brain, these vectors,
Yeah.
I think it's going to still be hard to leverage that into a business workflows.
So to summarize, I think what you're saying is a lot of business or enterprise data is still text heavy. So a lot of that matching, it's hard to do on a voice to voice, for example. And maybe B, some of the fine tuning, at least today, is tougher to do on without text as one of the modals. Is that the right way to think about it?
Not only text, think about imagery, like medical imagery.
Yeah.
I want to fine tune, let's say I want to have an agent, medical agent, that's going to interact with the imagery and I can ask questions, etc. You have new disease or new problems that you're going to see cancer, or a new way to detect the cancer. How are you going to fit this huge model that you need to train that's going to cost you a huge amount of money with this particular new disease? How do you fine tune those models? How much does it cost? Does it worth it? Do you keep up to date? Because the heavier is the model, the harder it is to upgrade, right?
Yeah.
So it's always finding the balance between, the use case. And maybe there are some good use cases for that. But for now, in the business standpoint, I think most of the systems are still having trouble to interact with the Zapier mode. Let's call it Zapier or workflow automation, whatever you call it, to only have syncing UPS, syncing your medical records, syncing with social security numbers, etc. I think it's going to be it's going to take years to get that into vector space and interact with that, or new imagery, etc. So I would say, for now, multimodality to me is great to see, but not something that is easy to leverage with the business.
Yeah, at least in the enterprise use case. Yeah. Look, you are probably working, around the clock building Gladia, but AI is also changing at a faster pace than one can imagine. So whether it's voice AI or broader, what resources do you read, or what do you do to kind of keep in touch of the emerging trends, so you kind of, as a CEO, not missing on something which is around the corner?
X is the key. I didn't find any better platform to keep things up to date, even if some of the researchers have moved away from it since the acquisition by Elon Musk, but it still remains one of the key. Also, there are two things that are interesting. Is like GitHub. You can have GitHub repos and scan the GitHub repos. So you have GitHub trends and you subscribe to a few keywords, and you're gonna have your GitHub trends every day. I'm using Alpha Zeta also to keep up to date with the research, and Hugging Face as a trend system. So that's also Archive is always also a good place. So that are kind of sources to keep up to date. Then when it comes to business, Twitter is always like the announcements are coming on Twitter, etc. I'd be very cautious of what's happening on Twitter, also because we've seen like Rabbit, etc. Like it was like the thing changing the world, like Rabbit, and then I don't know where Rabbit is. And then we had this Apple Vision Pro, whatever. This has been the massive trend. Everyone's, oh, we are late, and then we don't hear about Apple Massive Vision Pro. So I have a feeling that AI is kind of building some hypes, but the hypes go down after like 1 month. So I'd be very cautious on what's happening on Twitter, and won't base my strategy based on the announcements. I think more than ever, what's going to win is like going to be the long-term game, and how you address your real customer and real life customers and real life use cases and real life money, and not just hype on Twitter and number of retweets and thumbs up, because it seems to be like coming and leaving very fast, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, no such thing as bad PR. It definitely makes sense to kind of capture some attention. Well, look, this has been great, Jean-Louis. Thank you so much for doing this. Before we end, where can our listeners learn more about Gladia's latest updates?
We have a good blog, fairly technical and business oriented. We have X, so gladia.io/blog, and we have X, gladia_io, or myself, I'm tweeting a little bit, Jean-Louis. And LinkedIn. Okay, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm posting a lot also on LinkedIn.
Great. We'll make sure to add these to the show notes. Once again, thank you for doing this, Jean-Louis.
Thank you, Gaurav, for the invite.